If we don't have saints, it doesn't matter how good things might look from a worldly perspective, we have nothing. Now, 3 other events in particular come to mind when I think about the flourishing faithfulness among Catholic youth. I've actually spoken here last year briefly about World Youth Day in 2008. As Father McGuire mentioned, we've got the next World Youth Day going on right now in Madrid in 2011. I'll speak briefly about that, but first, the March for Life again. The March for Life is dominated by young adult Catholics. I went to Mass just this January, I bet some of you were there, in the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception at Catholic University, the biggest Catholic church in America. The church is packed to the brim with high school and college-age Catholics, hours before Mass even starts. And the next day on the streets, they prove their willingness to take a stand for the truth. And I see this as a trend because if you think back to 1973, I wasn't alive in 1973, but as far as I know, there was not much fighting of legal abortion. It kind of came in like a freight train without much of a whimper from the Catholics. But today we see the exact opposite. We see these multitudes of Catholics proclaiming the culture of life in stark opposition to the culture of death. I think we're starting to realize the truth in the scripture verse, friendship with the world is enmity with God. And we're no longer so concerned that the world doesn't think we're nice. Because in a world that has come to believe that truth is a lie, of course love is seen as hatred in that case. We always speak the truth in love, but if that's seen by others as being hatred, it's not something we can help. We're required to say it nonetheless. Another event that I recently attended was a youth festival in Medjugorje, Bosnia. That's the site of the alleged apparitions of the Blessed Virgin Mary. I embarked upon a pilgrimage there last year, just about almost exactly a year ago now, and had very powerful experiences there. I happened to go there when the youth festival was going on, although I didn't mean to coordinate that way, but I wound up cramming into that very small rural town in Bosnia with 70,000 other youth from around the world. A massive event. And it was actually somewhat miraculous I even got a spot there. It was the busiest time of year there. All the rooms were booked up months in advance, and I just planned my trip literally 2 days before I left on a whim of what I saw as divine guidance. And there's one spot left in the plane, one spot left in the room. It couldn't have been more coincidental if you want to look at it that way. But what I saw there was what really struck me about the youth. There was one night after Mass. There was an evening Mass, and then followed by adoration. It was an outdoor Mass, and it was about 11 p.m. at this point, and the Eucharist was out in the monstrance. And there were 40,000 of us before the Eucharist. And there was such reverent, prayerful silence before the Eucharist that truly some unknowing passerby could have been walking along and not noticed we were there. I witnessed the same thing at about 2 a.m. later that night when I climbed up a big, jagged, unlit, rocky hill to pray next to a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary. When I get to the top, you don't notice it first because it's so dark, but your eyes start to adjust and you realize there's hundreds of other people all over the top of this jagged slope praying fervently with a spirit of penance. People walking up the hill barefoot as a penance. It's truly astonishing. Lines for confession like you've never seen before. And one last observation that I think is a bit of a miracle is despite the tens of thousands of youth everywhere, I almost never saw a single police officer to keep order. There was perfect order at all these events, not a police officer in sight. And I do attribute some of this to what I believe to be the miraculous nature of the place, but I also attribute much of it to the great trends in the faithfulness of youth, which we're seeing right now going on at World Youth Day in Madrid. I wish I could be there, but the Frassati group has one of our members at least, Teresa Lloyd, over there right now. She's joining more than 1.5 million Catholics from 193 countries around the world. Pope Benedict himself leads the World Youth Day. Pope John Paul II initiated them in 1986, and ever since they happen every 3 years, and the Pope presides over them. And when I went to World Youth Day in 2008, I came out a different man than I went in, because a lot of people go there for the experience, for maybe the fun, but they come out much more serious Catholics. when I was at World Youth Day in 2008, they had an exhibit there of Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. They had his incorrupt corpse in a casket and an exhibit all about his life. When I read about him, this young man who had so much and did so much with his life, but he did not withhold the bulk of his time from God, praying multiple rosaries a day, going to Mass every day. And I thought about myself and I said, is God really not worth 1 hour of my life a day? And then I said, from now on I'm going to Mass every day and I'm praying the rosary every day. And that's thanks to World Youth Day, really, that I started, but I picked up that habit that I haven't yet abandoned. And I know that we'll see that exact same thing happening to many, many youth all around the world right now in Madrid. That's the good news. And I'll briefly touch on the bad news, because I think all of us are mostly aware of the bad news. As a whole, my generation